Good morning. Welcome along. There's the bongs. Bird song on. Lovely. Do say hello. Good morning. So that's your drawing. There's not a lot to draw. I've drawn it very heavily. We'll need it a bit heavy because the sky will obliterate it. Morning, Nick. I will jump on Discord shortly. Good morning, Callie. You're new, aren't you, Callie? Hello. Welcome. So I've put the colour lists out, haven't I? I've got the colours here anyway, so you can see. Well, it's nice how it frames our logo. White, ultramarine, cerulean blue. You don't need much ultramarine. Cadmium red and cadmium yellow. I've not drawn the little fly buzzing around the poppies. It's quite fun though. I'd be more tempted to put a dragonfly in just because I like dragonflies. Maybe I'll add it later. Who knows? I'll give you about 10 minutes to sketch it out. I've tried to keep it as simple as possible for a nice mellow morning. Morning, Sarah. Right, that's how I'm on that now. Morning, Nick. Alright, how are you? My hay fever is really bad today, actually. Really bad. I couldn't see properly for at least the first hour when I woke up. It was really bad. It's all up in my sinuses as well today. So there must be something local to me that when the wind's in a certain direction. See, now mine's worse. It's weird. It's got to be something local. And also, I think the other thing is I forgot, because I'm having to take one a day when it's really bad, one in the morning, one in the evening. I forgot to take last night's, so my body was not prepared to wake up to hay fever this morning. But never mind. Be a nice painting today. Limited palette. So, oh, my picture's gone. When you're drawn, just let me know you've drawn, so I know when to crack on. Oh, that's fine. Loads of time. Morning, Sarah. All right, I'll do. Bum, bum, ba-da-da-dee, da-dum, da-da-da-dum. Well, it's not raining today though, is it? It's just very overcast here. I don't know what it's like where you are, but it's just all right. Not as warm as it was. We have been spoiled with lovely weather though. Big is better than small. Okay, I think mine are a bit too small. I would have probably gone a bit bigger, but I don't know. I'll see how it looks. Um, I can always expand them slightly if I need to. Well, that's all right. That's all right. I've, I did toy with the idea of moving the one on the far right slightly across a little, and I don't know if I've got mine too close to the bottom, but we'll. Ba-da-ba-da-bum, bum, 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 ba-dum, bum, bum. Okay, how are we doing? Drawn? Nearly drawn? That's all right. I normally give more than 10 minutes actually, but I thought this was quite simple. You are? Yeah, I enjoy putting a bit of pressure on. I'll give you till quarter past, I don't mind. Thank you, Callie. To get my thing to scroll down. That's it. Wonderful. You're drawn, Sarah. Okay. So we've got cerulean blue or cool blue, white, bit of ultramarine, which is a warm blue, cadmium red, and cadmium yellow. So warm red and warm yellow today, or orangey red, orangey yellow, purpley blue, greeny blue, and white. So we're gonna, we don't want to be like mega stressful over this because it is supposed to be art for the anxious. So I don't want to make it hard. But equally, if I made it so easy that you could do it without me, then there wouldn't be any point in doing a lesson, would there? So I'm just getting a big brush and just wet it to make it user friendly. Now with this, I am going to put some white down and add a small amount of cerulean blue. It depends on the make of paint you use, but the blue I use is so strong, mine's the Sennelier Abstract one, that I find if I have too much paint on there, it really is too punchy for me. So that would be your cool blue and or your green blue and white. So it's not running, there's just the whites on there to help tone the colour down, and the blue. Part of me, I am going to try and go around the red poppy area. I might even stick a bit of ultramarine in the top part of the sky there, just to warm it up. So don't forget, with skies you do need to work fairly quickly because they you need the blend, but also to make it look real or sort of figurative, it needs to blend and be natural. And as those of you that have painted for a while know, trying looking natural or random, I think, is the biggest challenge in a painting. As I come down, I'll be using a bit more white with the blue, just so it blends a little bit more, gets a bit pale. It's always paler towards the horizon line, no matter what weather. And interesting when the sky's blue, because that's when you're out into the stratosphere and looking at the almost above the canopy of space, really. That's what makes the blue darker. Okay, I'm scrubbing around a little bit with this. And if we've got lines, that's alright. So you only need the amount of water that you need is there to help the paint move, not run. So it doesn't matter if I go over some of these green bits, as long as I can still see my pencil just about, so that's good. I forgot what I was just going to say. What was I saying? Say it again? Oh yeah, you don't want it to be runny, you see. Thank you, Sarah. I'm glad one of you listens. That's good. Because if it's too runny, what happens is you end up lifting off the paint, and it just doesn't have that right sort of tone or effect, and it's really hard to blend as it starts to dry anyway. So a cloudy sky is perfect for this. So we'll put our blue base on. And you can sort of go as sort of impressionist as you like with this, or you can go as photorealist as you like with this, or you might just be happy for anything that vaguely looks like poppies with a blue sky background. All options are a possibility. So when I need to sort of like add more water to my brush, basically what I do is I just dip the corner of the bristles of my brush in. Let's see, that's very blue there. Let's brush that out. So I'm not using a large amount of water, just enough. It's the water that starts to pick off the colour that's underneath if you're not careful. But it is drying really quickly, although it doesn't feel warm outside, although it's not cold. Just a little bit more of a blend in there. You see, part of me thinks I've done it, and then when I look at the camera, it doesn't look like I've blended at all well. But I think I'll stick with that for now, because I know where my clouds and things are going to go. Or I might even add more clouds. You see, I'm really not happy with that line, and I'm doing the just add a thing, which is never ever a good move really, for skies. Going, oh, I'll just stick another bit of colour here, and I'll just do a bit of this here, and then without realising it, you've ended up having to repaint the whole sky, like I'm having to do now, because you'll see a bit of a line and then that won't work and that won't look right, so you'll need to add another bit, and then it's just a constant battle. So there comes a point where you have to draw the line and go, right, I am not adding any more colour to that picture. I'm going to let it dry. So I'll give my brush a bit of a clean. I probably won't be using the big brush again. Where's my little old flat brush? Oh, getting older by the day, that one. I need to invest in some brushes again. You see, if I was doing this at the shop, I'd just nip downstairs and get them, but obviously I'm working from home at the moment. Oh dear, gosh, what was that? Well, you can tone it down with a bit of white, but the bluer your sky is, the more it will impact against the red, and it will look really sunny. So if it is quite a bright blue, then that's not a bad thing. It's okay to have a bright blue sky. I just always go softer sometimes with It's funny, I had a student a long time ago now who, when she worked in acrylics, she had the ability to make them the most beautiful pastel colours, so soft and muted. But then when she worked in watercolours, she made them all really vibrant and punchy. I never knew how she did it, to be honest, because usually it's the other way around, isn't it? Yeah, I used to call her the pastel queen. So I'm going to go with a smaller flat brush and sort of roll it and drag it, twist it between my finger and thumb to start layering clouds. Now these clouds are sort of out of focus and soft, so it's okay if it blends in with the blue a little bit. We don't really want strong tones here. If you've got a flat brush, it works better for clouds than a round brush, especially with the way you roll. If you roll it between finger and thumb like this, you get more cloud edges, fluffy edges, whereas with a round brush you often will just get V shapes or points. So we just sort of roll it around a little bit. We might add a bit of tone on some of these clouds, I don't know, but we will. We'll do something. But it's, you know, when you start adding things, that's when art becomes potentially annoying for yourself, because you know, what you don't want to do is have artist's remorse and just regret putting more things on there. So if you can sort of hold back just a little. See, I'm very tempted. Everything's in this lower bottom part now, isn't it? I'm gonna go rogue and just stick some wispy bits, basically what's left over on my brush. It's all down here in the picture because I've got a lot more sky in my picture than the photograph. That's better. I'll go with that. What, my picture? Yeah. Well, I don't want it too blue. You could make it really blue, but I like clouds. You see, cloudless would look really good. It just depends on how good your blue is. Do you know what I mean? If you've got a really good matte blue, solid blue sky, cloudless works really, really well. But I've got a few patches where it just didn't work, so I'm covering them up with clouds. But yeah, it's absolutely open to interpretation, which is what's great about it. Also, I think what makes mine look cloudier is that I've actually got my blue is so pale that in the lower half that I haven't got much contrast between the sky and the clouds, you know. So actually there are no clouds along this bit at all, but it looks like it. Now I could actually, now I've got the clouds, I could add a bit of my sky back in, my sky blue, and then put a little bit of cloud over the top of that, where the colours meet. My blue a little bit stronger, because that was the issue, is I added too much white to my blue. And then what I'll do to this to make it look like the clouds are back in front of the white, in front of the sky, is I will just put a little bit of cloud over the top of them again where they meet. Yeah. Okay. Well, you know, Nick, whatever helps you create. I know people that when they move their brush, they move their tongue in the direction of their brush. So it's only a sort of similar thing to that. I don't think I do anything because I've had to spend my whole career in front of people. The only naughty thing I do is suck my brush every now and again, but I try to do that when, not in acrylics, usually in watercolour. I try to do that when nobody is watching, but I've been caught out a few times. Right, if I let that dry, and then I'll go in with a bit more white over the edges of those to bring the clouds back. It just needs to dry long enough. Because when again with acrylics and watercolor in any medium, once you you either need to work with the colors while they're wet or work with the colors when they're dry. If you go in when they're nearly dry, that's when you lift off color and it stops it stops working for you. Watercolors is exactly the same, so don't think it's unique to just acrylics. I need to squeeze a bit more white out. I was a bit overly cautious with my white. And now I need a bit more. There we go. Because then it makes it easier. You can make your clouds a bit whiter. It's nice to have a contrast, but obviously the sun is coming from above, so the tops of the clouds need to be whiter. So if I put it a little bit thicker, because again it depends if you want your paint thick or thin. That is very much a personal choice. There's no right or wrong in acrylics. If you choose to have sort of thicker paint, which is called impasto, that's fine. Or you may enjoy the you know, the fiddling, so you go softer and do a bit more with the old blending, which is also okay. This is the thing about style and technique. I would never tell you that you have to use a certain brush. I'm using a nylon brush, but if you wanted thicker lines, you would find that a hog bristle or a stiffer bristle brush will give you the effect that you want. will put some purple tints, I think, in there, in among them. Under the clouds, so you can just about make out in the photograph that there's a little bit of a purple tint underneath the clouds to make the light feel like it's coming from the top angle. Now there are two ways you can do this. If you want to go more purpley, you can use the ultramarine and cadmium red. If you want to go more grey, you can go with the cerulean blue and the cad red. I think I want to go a bit purple, really, to make it feel warmer rather than cold. And the ultramarine is going to be used mainly for shadow tone, and it'd be good if we can have it elsewhere in the picture. If we've only got ultramarine in one bit, it kind of stands out too much. So I'm just going to mix up a little bit of cadmium red and ultramarine. More ultramarine than cadmium red to make a sort of purple. Add a bit of white. And I'm just going to plop that in. There's your technical term. You say, well, that's a bit pink now. Let's get a bit more blue in there. It's a bit blue now. Cadmium red is one of the strongest colours on your palette, so I often call it a hungry colour because it tends to eat everything else up very easily. So when you're adding any tone, so I use a flat brush on its corner when I'm painting clouds and things, just because it gives me a better edge. And again, this paint isn't runny. It just helps build colours up. And also, because this is acrylics, if you do mess up, not that I'm saying you will at all, but if you do, don't matter, let it dry. Paint a bit more over the top, you're fine. Nobody will know. And I won't tell anyone for a couple of quid. Or a bottle of Jack Daniel's honey. I'm really into that at the moment. Wow. It's funny, I never ever normally drink at all. But it's because I'm always at work and I'm travelling or driving and moving around. And I get gifted lots of nice alcohol and spirits and things. And I never touch them because I'm always driving. So I've been making up for that over the lockdown, and that's how I've discovered Jack Daniel's honey. And I nearly changed my Facebook status to in a relationship with, because it's so nice. I always end up talking about food, biscuits or alcohol. Have you noticed in these classes? I've got I've run out of strawberry jam now. So do you remember I made carrot jam about a month ago? I'm going to start on that soon. Keeps for a year, so that's amazing. Right, I'm not going to do any more, he says, carrying on with his brush. We'll do a bit of muted green down below. Yeah, I'm not pleased with this. This is good. Not displeased. Not pleased. Not displeased. We'll see what it works like. But it's important to have as much white, sorry, for your poppies, because although the red is strong, it will change colour when it depends how thick you put it on. So it's for yellows and reds, you always want to work on a white surface. because they are more transparent, unless you want to spend 20 to 30 pounds a tube and get artist's quality acrylic, which are more opaque. Even then they're not fully opaque. So yeah, with fluorescent colours, reds and yellows, it's always best to work with a white surface. So even if we'd painted this whole sky blue because you know you wanted a free run of the sky, and wanted to paint it all blue, then put the poppies on afterwards, my advice would be that you'd paint the poppies back in white, let it dry, then put the red on. And the reason why, and it's quite important, that when you're dealing with reds and yellows particularly, if you need to make the red more solid, you can't add white to it, can you? Because then it goes pink. So it's really hard. So you're better off working on a white surface with reds and yellows. So if I was going to have daisies or I don't know, something in green grass, I would probably put the centre of the daisies or poppies or what have you in white, then put the blue on the top. It just makes the painting stand out a bit more. It gives it more of a glow, whereas if you're painting over a dark colour, it doesn't glow. I'm very acrylic-y this week, aren't I? This is my third acrylic class this week that I've taught. And you've been at all of them, Nick. And Sarah, have you? No, you weren't there Tuesday, were you? The Galleon, you weren't. Chris's is amazing, isn't it? Yeah, I saw it this morning. He said he got attacked by a swarm of flies, though, so he had to abandon it. But it looked really good. I know. You see, this is where these online classes are great, because Brad was always either with childcare or work, so he was toying with the idea before lockdown with them, but we hadn't fully got it set up, had we, until a week before lockdown happened. So no, this is really great. I hope you're doing all right, Callie. You up? What group? Oh yes, yes. I noticed that she liked the photograph this morning, so yes, she must have got in. Yeah, I thought I'd mention those two today well, yesterday on social media, because I think it's interesting if people are interested in how to do it. Now we've got the option that they can see how to do it, can't they? So they can go in and watch a lesson again at any point. There's one thing on it that I've done wrong, and I will need to darken an area where I put the bush. There's no shadow of the bush on the floor, so I've got to sort that out. But that's by the by. That's been really picky. Okay, so we'll just let that dry a little bit. How's it going, Callie? Have you done much in acrylics before, or anything before, or is this new to you? I appreciate you probably can't type and talk and paint at the same time, so don't feel pressured into answering straight away. Get to a bit where you well, also it depends on how people are watching it. If it's on full screen, there's no space to comment, is there? So it's a bit of a faff sometimes. And where are you from, Callie? I'm also interested in that. And some nice pictures from the drawing class yesterday as well. Really? You think? Gosh, it was quite an intense class really in terms of technique. Maybe my waffle was masking it. Maybe that's the answer. I have to talk a lot through the really hard classes, so it makes it feel like it's a really easy class and you haven't done much. But then, you know, when you compare the different classes, um, you'd come from two intense classes with the Galleon and the Bluebell Wood, haven't you? So the drawing class, because you haven't got to worry about mixing or tone or colour, um, it it seemed more achievable. But so obviously sometimes it's good to have a class that is more achievable, because at least then if you're feeling a little bit disheartened, at least you've got one that you're fairly pleased with. You Bluebell Wood, you like it now? Oh, well, you'll be pleased to know, Callie, that these online classes will stay forever, even when our classroom's back open. So you can access all of our online classes. Each lesson's a fiver, or some pay £25 a week, and they can access every single class that we do in all of the groups. So it's kind of worth it for that, because you can constantly keep dipping in and looking at watercolours or drawing or acrylics or gouache or pencil, and see how you get on. I have got I've just seen your message about the colour mixing. I have got a 30-minute video on our it's through a closed YouTube video with a link, and that's on offer at £4 at the moment. It's a half an hour colour mixing video. So there are three. The first one is about mixing greens, oranges and purples. You might find that useful for £4, and then I can just email you the link to access that video, and you have unlimited use to watch that as many times as you want to. So it does make a difference. I use 8 colours, sometimes 9 maximum, in every single lesson of painting that I'm doing, whether it's oils, watercolours, gouache or acrylics, and they're the same colours. So over time you would, you know, get a better understanding of how to mix them and move them about, and what colour makes what, because I kind of do all of the really hard work before the class by letting you know which colours you need, but I try to talk about it during the lesson so it makes more sense. But the colour mixing video should help. I've also got several pages of colour mixing in my book, which is more of a reference guide, and that's quite intense, but if it's worth sticking with it, because it does make a little bit more sense on why choose certain colours over other colours, you know, why that yellow or why that blue. So yeah, it does make a difference. I want to put a little bit of background green in here, but I don't want it too much and it needs to be out of focus. So I'm going to use my little flat brush, a little bit of cad yellow and a tiny bit of cerulean and a little bit of white. I don't think I've got enough mixed up. I only say a tiny bit of cerulean because in watercolours cad yellow is a little bit more orange than in acrylics. Well, it depends which cad yellow. If you've got cad yellow deep, that is very orange. So I'm just adding a bit of white on here, and I'm just tinting the bottom of the page and brushing upwards. You could stab, you could flick, don't matter. If you need to stock up on supplies, Oh, that's where I know you've. Yeah, okay. Um, we've got our online shop is starting. We've got a few calligraphy items on there as well at the moment. We have so much stock. It's going to take me a long time to get it all up and running online. So if it's something specific you need, let me know. Because you're Banbury based, I can deliver it. It's on what colour? Okay. I find cadmium yellow and cerulean are a really nice summery mix, you know, because it's not vibrant. You see, lemon yellow and cerulean is acid coloured green, whereas this is sort of not as vibrant, but feels nice and summery. Whereas sometimes lemon yellow and ultramarine can give a bit more of an emeraldy green, and that also looks a little bit fake. I've used a small flat brush, yes. That's now really old. Look, you can see how it's just falling and, you know, parted, so it's no longer flat, to be honest. It's more of a spiky brush, but it's useful. I am really bad at throwing brushes away and pencils away. I'll keep pencils until they're sort of half an inch. I feel sad when I have to say goodbye to them, and same with brushes. I keep the brushes as long as I can and use them in other aspects. So I start with watercolour brushes, and the watercolour brushes often then migrate to acrylic brushes. The acrylic brushes might migrate to oil brushes, and then when they past anything and they're really stiff and they're basically like spades, then I won't use them anymore. But sometimes they work out quite usefully. So I'm going to let that dry. It's a bit earlier than we normally have a coffee break, but I think this can totally dry so we can lean on it to work on the poppies then. So we'll have 5-10 minutes, and I promise it will be 5 or 10 minutes and not 2.5 minutes. So you'll have a chance to grab a brew or have a fiddle with your painting. Yeah, you can just... Yeah, the yellow's important. That if you've got too much blue, it can really... because it's such a vibrant blue cerulean. Pale mushy pea sounds good. Right, let's get the kettle on. Pick up, pick up, pick up, pick up. Oh, bombs going off everywhere. Right, I'm back. Are you all been good? Nope. Yeah, yeah. Right, so so it's my fault, is it? I'm a hardened professional, thank you very much, Nick. I didn't say professional what there, did I? Oh, that coffee's too hot now. Right, so we're going to start working on the flowers. There'll be a few layers with the flowers to make it sort of feel like the sun's hitting it. But I'm just going to start with cadmium red on its own, and I'm just going to shove that on as is. I'm using a filbert brush that I've just picked out because my big brush is too big for this, or a round brush would work really well for this, but I can't find where mine's gone. So I'm having more of a jaggedy edge along the top, which a round brush would do better. And I'm stroking the paint. I'm sort of following the direction of the petals, because it's a little bit better if you can do it that way. So you don't, just don't go left and right, left, right, left, right. Think about the angle of the petal and paint accordingly, and that would be the same no matter which medium you use. Oh, I've gone up there, I've just flipped a bit too much. So you can see where I've gone over my sky, or my sky is sort of run into where the white space is, that it's a slightly darker tip. But that's okay, because we can deal with this. So each petal I'm going to paint individually and angle it around. So where would you say that the light is coming from? The upper left hand side in this picture, and the reason why I know that for certain is the shadow on one of the seed heads, well, the unopened poppies, that's almost in the middle, because the shadow is on the light's hitting it on the right, but there's also a shadow off the flower above it on the left hand side. So it can take a bit of a while to work out light sources in pictures, but it's well worth it, because once you can understand it, it can change your whole picture, because we're always scared about that. So my demo on Saturday is actually about how to make objects look more three-dimensional in watercolour, but it will still apply for any medium. I'm going to have to hunt for my although with my round brush I can't find that, but I will have my little fiddly brush later, so I can fiddle with the bits that I'm not able to do at the moment. Let's see if I can find that one. I washed them all up after Tuesday's class, that's the problem. No, I can't find where I put them all, but I know I didn't use this one. And it's good to have an odd number of flowers. It just looks better in terms of a composition. If you wanted to though, you could sneakily put in one of these unopened pods just a sort of little bit of red, so it feels like it's about to open. So they're all very one tone, no modelling, no anything with this. At the moment we haven't got any light. This is what it's what's known as local colour, believe it or not. So a local colour is the colour of an object without light or dark on it. So it's like the base colour, called local colour. Oh, that coffee's still too hot. And then we'll add the lights and add the darks, and that should work. We kind of tend to do that in acrylics and oils. In watercolours we often start with the light and gradually get darker, but with certain objects we might lift out, so then that's kind of putting in the main colour and lifting out to get the light and adding the darks afterwards. So more often than not you paint the base colour and then spend a bit of time lightening or darkening. No, because I haven't got my round brush, I'm just going to use this smaller brush to give me some neater edges. From where that brush was a bit too big. But still following the contours. I've done the what? The third one. Oh, I'm like a whippet me once I've got my paintbrush out. That's alright. You see, I can do that, and I can just sit back now and wait for you all to catch up. But you can just about still see my pencil lines through this, which is perfect. Excuse me. Thank you. So we need that to dry before we can put anything else on the top anyway, so that's good. Technically this would work well in pastels as well, and you could do it in watercolour, but you might struggle to get it as vibrant. I think in watercolour the sky would be the hardest thing to do because it's such a large expanse. little bits that won't dry, but that's all right. All the birds have finished. I was wondering why it was so quiet. I thought it wasn't that quiet earlier when I wasn't talking. Let's have a... That's better. A little bit of noise. Right, so still a few wet bits. I'd rather leave it for another minute than attack it too soon, because we're going to glaze, or sort of glaze, just with a thin coat of yellow on the real light areas. Well, yeah, the calligraphy glasses are good, aren't they, Callie? In different either lettering or traditional calligraphy styles. That'll be next Saturday as well, the next calligraphy class. I don't know if I can adapt that, because it's a... I don't know how well people can do that, but we'll see. Right, so if I'm going to go with my smaller brush now with some cadmium yellow. And I'm just going to paint where the light areas are. So it's going to be a little bit weird at the moment. But if you make your yellow slightly diluted with a bit of water, not too much water, just a little bit. Because again, we can't add white really, because the white will go pink. So it's better to have yellow that will go more of an orange colour. Really make it, again you want your lines to follow the shape of the petal rather than just go left or right. And it helps give it that sort of silky, satiny feel, doesn't it? I am, yeah. A round brush would be better. I think this is a small round brush. I think this is a size 0 of a miniature painting brush that's been moved to acrylics from gouache, because it started to split a little. And you're better off just doing this, even if it's really runny. Do it in a more dilute way than then you can put another layer on top afterwards if it doesn't work, or if it's too soft. It's better to do that than make it just go bright yellow. We'll be doing something similar with the the purple. Gosh, my hay fever, you can hear it in my throat and my nose today. And this one's a funny one. Do you know what? The light, I can't work out the light because the poppy I'm just looking at, the seed head in front of it, the shadow is to the left of it. How bizarre is that? So that would indicate the light is coming from that way. But that makes no sense for the shadow on that one. Oh, well, we'll just... You up? Oh, okay. Slight glow on the underside of that. See, I might put a bit more yellow on. Maybe. In a few places. But you need it to dry before you put any other colour on, only because it will just lift off like we've discussed earlier. But yeah, you're right, Callie. The if you, especially while they're all online and they're only a fiver, try as many different things. If you're new to it all, try watercolours, see if you like that, or get on with it. Try acrylics, try calligraphy, try drawing, and then you'll find what you enjoy doing. Obviously, you may not be amazing at it any straight away, because very few people are amazing at anything that they pick up for the first time. But you'll get more of a feel for if you prefer it more than another medium. So we'll let that dry. So best off doing the whole poppy, including the darks. Then we can work on the seed heads, the buds and the stems. And once the shading goes on, it will even in just these poppies, it will start to stand out and feel a little bit more solid. The darks are what everybody's scared of, but they're the things that you need the most. yellow's not standing out as much all of a sudden. As it's drying, it's gone a bit more flat and matte. A bit more yellow. See, I might put bits of white in areas when it's all dry as a thin white glaze, especially on that petal that's on the second flower in from the left. It's got a bit of a sheen on it, so like a bloom on a grape or something. So I will probably add a bit of white on that, but I'm going to just do a tiny bit more yellow because mine has disappeared, and then I'll show you how to get the shadow colour, which is purple. It is purple, and it's ultramarine and cadmium red. Aubergine colour. Really runny. Sorry, I got my brush in my mouth. Zoom in a little bit on those, and then I can start putting them in. It was a bit scary at first to do this. Got to be runny to make it move about. And you can get some of the thin ridges in. The more watery it is, the more you're able to get a bit of definition. In there. And I probably haven't mixed anywhere near enough colour, because I'm being tight and working on a paper plate. It sort of absorbs the colour. Oh, I do love darks. I think they're my favourite things to put in. Is a bit of the shadow. Always makes me happy. where you want it really dark, you just use less water and more paint. But again, that's something that you can build up. A bit more up for the other. We will need we will be using some of this for the shadow on everything, but just use it for the poppies for now, and then we'll get it mixed up again for the other parts, which should just be on the stems and things, so it's not a huge amount needed for that, but it will probably have dried by the time we've got there. Hopefully you can see how it has made the yellow more yellow now the darks are in. I think building up layers is the best thing that you can do. I wouldn't put like 30 or 40. I'm friends with an artist, Angela Gorn, who's one of the UK's top wildlife painters, and she's run a few courses for us, or classes, full day classes, over the years, and she will spend hours just putting one glaze on, letting it dry, then put another glaze of a different colour on, and then put another glaze of a different colour on. So she'll build it up, and they look astounding, absolutely astounding. But you know, I remember the one class she did of painting a tiger cub in acrylics in a 6-hour class. Even with just half an hour lunch, people were nowhere near finished with the amount of layering, and you know, the drawing was drawn, every stripe, every line, everything. So it was almost like a, you know how you see paint by numbers, just loads of lines everywhere, and then it was all filled in meticulously throughout the day. It was really good. I did one of her classes. Really interesting to see how she works, but I'm not that meticulous at all. Right, I'm stopping with my darks there. Oh, you know, I'm quite pleased with these. How's it going? Slowly. How about you, Nick? Good. That's good. Yeah. The consistency comes in time because of It's just knowing how much paint and how much water, isn't it? It's the same with watercolours, really. Build it up slowly, and you'll get to it, because obviously there's no one rule either. So, you know, in some things you're going to need more water, and in other aspects you're going to need less water. So yeah, it is tricky. It is tricky. I've squeezed out far more paint than I need. Could probably do 2 or 3 paintings with these 4 colours. Shame I haven't got time, because I've got a class at 2. It's the repeat of Monday nights. Yeah, Thursday. And there's not one tonight, because it would be the Art Society that we haven't got at the moment because of lockdown. On which one? What, the taller one? Yeah. Right, hang on, I'll zoom in so you can see it. Hang on. I have kind of just filled it in though, to be fair. And I've left it slightly paler on the outside. Yeah, you want them sort of a slight curve. Yeah, do tap with your finger if you want to get more of a subtle line, because we'll be working in the same green that we used for the lower bit with the cad yellow and the cerulean, but with that there won't be any white really with it, because we want it to come forward. Because it's such a simple scene, you don't really want to. You could knock it up in half an hour if you wanted to, but it's better to just add an extra bit of time and build it up slowly. I mean, as you know, most of our classes aren't this slow. Just mixing up the green that I want us to get. Right, so the actual green that I want for the stems and buds and stuff is quite a yellow green. I can put a blob on here so you can see. It's a very yellow green. And everything's going to be in this colour actually, because it's all poppies, so they'll all follow the same colour scheme. So this is the cadmium yellow with a bit of the blue, the cerulean, and enough water to make the paint move, but we're not after ink, an inky consistency at this point. And the reason why is because if it's too runny, it'll suddenly go see-through, and you need it to be opaque enough. I don't quite know what I've done with this. And then we can add a purple shadow either around the edge or on them or something later on. When I say later on, I mean in a few minutes, because time is flying by. We'll be doing a poppy class in November, but more of a memorial theme. So the seed bud, the seed heads are more triangular and angular, and they've got that little pepper pot top, haven't they? Whereas the buds are more rounded with a little point. Yeah, see. I've jinxed you, Nick, sorry. Yeah, well, I'm fortunate, aren't I, in that, oh, I should zoom out, sorry. I'm fortunate in that I've got mine on a screen at all times. So I can look at the screen and go, oh, no, that hasn't worked, or I need to lighten this or darken this. Because sometimes I can't tell, you're right. Mirrors are a really good way of working that out as well. A mirror or a photograph. But then equally, I've had some times my students have said, oh, back in the old days when we could actually meet face to face, you know, oh, this is a really awful picture, or I don't like it, and then I just take a photograph of it, and I don't really edit it, but I just lighten it a little bit, because sometimes, you know, it doesn't necessarily work straight away, and the lighting in certain places affects how the colour looks. So I'll just tweak the colour a fraction, and then when I show them again, they go, that's never my picture, I didn't do that. And I go, it is. And all I've done is lightened it enough. Ooh, Nick, that's gorgeous. Really nice. I definitely think you've got more of an illustrative style, you know? But that's good. I'm quite jealous of that. I don't know what I am. I'm in between illustrative and figurative, they call it now. Where it's not good enough to look realistic, but it's also not like a book illustration. Right, so Impressionism. Good question. Now you're going to make me have to use my brain, Nick. Impressionism is sort of, it's not illustrative, it's kind of, I mean, I always describe it as looking at an object through frosted glass. So it gives the idea of something, whereas illustrative tends to be more book illustration when people think about illustrative. So although there's tone and there's you know, there's you know, three-dimensionality there or what have you, it's more of a simplified style, yeah? Whereas Impressionism isn't necessarily simplified, it's more of a looser style. Illustrative is not a loose style, and illustrative can be extremely tight with pen work and, you know, that kind of thing. Whereas Impressionism, there's a much freer movement and motion in the brushstrokes, which is why it's all about the brushstrokes, in fact, because both Monet, Van Gogh, and all of the Impression artists, with the exception of Degas, who wasn't an Impressionist painter initially, he was a trained detailed painter before he lost his eyesight during the Franco-Prussian War. It's all about the brushstroke that makes it Impressionist, you know. So if I was going to do this as an Impressionist sky, I would use a flat-ended brush, and I would use it in little slabs of rectangular paint, yeah? So it's not illustrative, that wouldn't work well. If you imagine it printed in a book, illustrative needs matte, flat colours to work well, whereas Impressionism is not about matte and flat, it's all about brushstrokes. So with an Impressionist painting, it's known as alla prima, which is every brushstroke is integral to the finished painting, whereas with a lot of normal painting, including today, for example, we've covered a lot of our original brushstrokes up and we've put the layers on the top. So a staged or studio painting is the traditional way of painting, and that's where you put colours on, or sometimes you might put black and white on quite thinly, and then you might add a colour here or a glaze there, and then you build up the texture later. So your final strokes often cover up your original strokes, whereas in Impressionism, every single brushstroke was part of the picture. Does that answer your question? Good. So illustrative is more of oh, I put the wrong blue in there. I want a bit more a bit more cerulean in it for the leaves. I do like Impressionism, but I think it's got its place. What I don't like is when, I've experienced this, and it does make me cross, when people who are less able to paint try something and it doesn't work, so they call it Impressionism. Do you know what I mean? That's not Impressionism. I've taught classes on Impressionism, and it's extremely hard to get the looseness and freedom in the brushstrokes. Whereas, you know, there's no shame in doing something and it not working well, and you just going, oh well, that didn't work, but I'll try it again. But to then try and pass it off, the shop I grew up working in and then left to do more serious education training, and then came back, there was a sort of living artist in the gallery area, and he wasn't great, if I'm honest. He really wasn't, and this isn't me being horrible. He lacked a lot of the skill and discipline, but he was a retired guy and he enjoyed splashing paint about, which is fine. But he would regularly, I remember there was a football thing and he did a painting of David Beckham, and it was awful. His hands looked like bananas, and this was in the shop window. So to make him feel better, he said it was Impressionism, and it wasn't Impressionism. It was just bad. And that's to me is the difference. So I would love people to try Impressionism, and I've got a few videos actually. If you trawl through 8 years of our video section on the Facebook, I've done a few demos on Paint Like Monet, because Monet's brushstroke was known as Tache, T-A-C-H-E, and that means sort of like dabs or stain, and he used bricks of paint, and you can see that more so in his water more than his skies, but it's all to do with the flat brush with Impressionism. Right, I'm going to stop there, and then the rest of this can be done in purple. But if you remember, I did say I wanted to put a bit of dilute white just on parts of these petals to give it that sheen, which I will just do, and it is really runny white, but if you do too much you run the risk of it not being a sheen and it just being a mess. I like Impressionism, and if I'm honest, I've never really liked Van Gogh's paintings until I did a lesson on Paint Like Van Gogh, and it made me really appreciate the technique and style that he worked in. That was, when you think about it, everybody tried to copy Monet because he was one of the most successful painters in his lifetime. You know, when you look through art history, most artists struggle. Monet did not struggle once Impressionism took off and he went global. He was selling paintings for tens of thousands of francs in the early 1900s, which was really high. Sisley basically copied Monet's strokes. I know some people love Sisley, so if you do, I apologise, but I do class him as a poor man's Monet. And but Van Gogh's style, nobody ever has created, and the nearest I've got or seen people recreating Van Gogh's sort of impressionism or post-impressionist style, or fauvism. He was a fauvist as well as a neo-impressionist. Is Hockney. In a few years ago with his iPad paintings, he did very similar techniques to Vincent van Gogh, but on an iPad, so it's a digital version. But he's the closest person I've seen recreating Van Gogh's work in terms of normal painting instead of doing forgeries, whereas lots of people tend to do a sort of Monet tache style if they want to do looser work. It's fascinating, really, looking at styles. But it's interesting about digital art, isn't it, actually? I'm just waiting for this to dry, that's why I'm waffling, and then I'm going to put the purple on. With digital art, yes, it is art, and there is a huge skill. Um, I do consider it an art form. However, do I consider it the same level of an art form as Michelangelo? No, I definitely do not, because your art is only as good as the programmed brushstrokes. You know what I mean? Yeah, they've all. You know, you can click on a brushstroke and it will blend in, and it'll make it look impasto. Yeah, it. Yeah, you are absolutely. So you're learning a technique in the same sense that you're learning which buttons to press and how to move it. In a similar way that you're learning on what brush to use and how to manipulate the paint. Um, but it will only ever be as good as the person who created that specific brush style online. Whereas, yeah. Also, my biggest bugbear with digital art is you'll never own an original. You can never own an original unless you buy the iPad that it was created on. Um, you know, it will always be a print. And it is quite hard, you know, I've seen digital art and I find it really hard to work out if it was painted or not with certain, you know, with high-end digital paint programs. Uh, and I know a lot of artists that will do both, so they'll draw it and then they'll scan it, then they'll colour it digitally. I've done that before now, and it's really interesting. If I'm doing something for, I had to do a map for somewhere once, so I drew all of the items and then coloured them digitally. It took a lot longer, but you do get more of solid colours that reproduce well. So it's got its place, but I take your point. It's not. I don't think it's the same level as art or expertise as what we'd class the old masters as, and some people would disagree. Yeah, no, it's an art form, but it's not a painting, which is why I think it has to be classed as digital art rather than a painting, because there is no paint involved in it. But it's very skillful, absolutely, and it's something I can't do. Yes. No, I know what you mean. And I don't even think it's the case that digital artists are frustrated real life artists. I think it is a total different medium. I mean, if you think about it, in terms, I'm just adding this purple on the in places, but this is really runny this time. It's the runniest that I've used because of it needs to sort of more of a glaze. I'm trying to do the little hairs, but I could do with an even thinner brush. But it's portable, so it's great for holidays and things. Digital art, absolutely. But I think because I've grown up working in the physical art world, you know, I think this is 25 years this year, I will always have a leaning towards real life because, you know, no matter how long you've been doing it, there's always a new way of learning. Always a new way of learning a technique. And I've learned a lot more since I began teaching because I'm having to think of a different way again of how to work something, and you know, not in a big-headed way. There are several times that I've come up with a method and I've thought, oh God, I wish I was taught that instead. I would have found that so much easier 20 odd years ago to learn this way. And then I will use that method myself because it's easier. I haven't got one. I honestly haven't got one. I appreciate the Renaissance. We call them the masters because they're you know, it's sort of never been surpassed in terms of technique and mastery when you think of everything that they had to do. To mix their own paints, they only had very small brushes and that kind of thing. I find that absolutely amazing, and I'm in awe. There are some amazing female painters of the Renaissance who I rate better than Michelangelo and Da Vinci, but they don't get much airtime. Sophonisba Anguissola is one of them. She was one of the most amazing Italian Renaissance painters, who was groundbreaking in her use of portraiture, which is just stunning stuff, and she doesn't get much of a look in terms of a modern world. She's getting a little bit more well known now, but she was famous and earning a huge living in her lifetime. But I do like the Impressionist paintings. I also like the Pre-Raphaelite artwork, especially Rossetti, and the way their ethos of trying to create realism and only painting from life. Found that fascinating. Holman Hunt's work's amazing as well. I also love Cubism. I find that fascinating, even though I can't do it myself. So I genuinely don't have a favourite style or era of art. I love Art Nouveau. I think the work of Mucha is amazing, which is very graphic and illustrative. I also love the work of Klimt. I just love art, and I can appreciate all of it for what it is. So no, I really don't have a style that... I think that Barry Whitehouse is the best, to be fair. He's one of the best artists I've seen. He's a bit of a washed out old has-been now, to be fair. His career's long gone. He peaked in his 20s and he's been going downhill ever since. But yeah, I just love art, and you know, there are some artists who do photorealism that I think are amazing. The portraits of Chuck Close are fantastic. If you've never heard of him, look him up because he makes portraits. They're huge, absolutely huge, but they're divided up into squares, and each square is sort of like a swirl of a colour, of a different colour. Absolutely amazing. So I really can't say I love this style or this style. I was obsessed with Constable as a teenager, but I moved on to Turner quite quickly because I enjoyed the freedom of Turner's work and the way he used colour in a very different way to Constable. So I'm a bit of a painterly butterfly in that I just like all of it, and I'll flit about. Yes, you see, Lowry's really interesting, and coming from Manchester, I suppose that's yeah, yeah. Ooh, do you know? I'm just going to do a purple seed head and stuff just in the distance. Gosh, lots of bongs. But yeah, Lowry's great. There's just so much in the art world that to see and learn about, and different styles, techniques, and there really is so much. And I'm really lucky that when I do my art history lectures that I'm able to touch on it. I recently did a course on the art of ancient China. Well, you were at it. The ancient China, fascinating. But then equally, I did a course on ancient Greek, Egyptian, and Roman art, and that was amazing to see. Um, how nothing is new. There was one painting that they unearthed, an ancient Greek painting unearthed on a wall in a tomb of a chariot racer and a horse, and there was so much three-dimensional tone and modelling to it that you'd think it was late Renaissance, but it was 1,000 years earlier. And now, to me, that's astounding, and it does show that there's absolutely nothing new in the art world um, at all. And then when I do my courses on forgotten women artists, I really enjoy giving them a voice again, because a lot of them were high-profile artists when they were alive, and then after their death, their work gets attributed to male contemporaries, and they get forgotten about, and it's a shame. So it's nice to breathe new work, new life into paintings that are hundreds and hundreds of years old that people don't realise were by women. So I'd love it that we, instead of having to have um, special exhibitions for women artists, that the work actually gets put alongside their male contemporaries, and it's treated as if, I don't know why we have to be in awe and say, oh gosh, this was painted by a woman, really? Um, it's mad. But then I know the art world, like every part of it. I'm just going to do a few white glazes on some of these stems. But, I was chatting, one of my customers a long time ago was on the selection committee for the Royal Academy. And he openly said, that when they receive commissions, submissions for Academy entries, if it was signed by, Jane Smith, they would instantly thumb down and go, not another woman Sunday painter. That was his quote. Um, if there was a woman and they got a painting in the Royal Academy submissions and it was signed by Jane Smith, whether they thought it was good or not, they would initially go, not another woman Sunday painter, and then it would go and never be accepted. Whereas if it was signed by J. Smith, it would be accepted in its own right because they wouldn't know the gender. Um, it is horrendous, absolutely. I mean, I don't think it's that bad now, so don't get me wrong, and there's a lot more female Royal Academicians than there ever has been, but yeah, it's an eye-opener when you start studying art history, I tell you. Right, I've put a few white glazes on that, and I'm a bit happier with it now. I love that little busy bee, buzzy fly thing though, but I'm not going to put it on. I'm not putting it on, but I do love it. I have though, look, I mean, look how much paint I've still got on my plate. And I've hardly touched any of it, and I thought I was being really stingy today. It just goes to show, doesn't it? We can't, even those of us that have been doing this for a long time still can't work out how much paint that I need. Need to touch up an area where there's no colour at all by that poppy, and it needs a bit of blue. You see, this is what I like about acrylics, is that I can go in and neaten edges up and change a few things, paint over it if I need to. If you notice, I've put a few purple washy poppy heads in the background, but it's still all low. I didn't want anything. If I was going to do anything, I would probably put a bee or a dragonfly either far left or over here above the two main poppies. I don't know if I want to. I'll have to see if that will grow on me. Part of me wouldn't mind because I think it'd be interesting. I don't know. But I've really enjoyed doing this. It's a nice, soft and gentle. So next week, next Thursday morning. Oh, it's a vase of flowers in pastel now. It might be a photograph of a vase of flowers because obviously I don't know how I could set up my camera to have a vase of flowers and that you could see my painting unless I worked upright, which I could do. I've got enough easels and bits around here, so leave it with me. I've just got to actually get a vase of flowers. That's going to be the hardest thing at the moment. But I could order me some flowers and make the house smell nice. Why not? And then put it up and then have the camera on that and then an easel next to it. So that'll be quite exciting. So I hope you've enjoyed today. It's been quite mellow. You know, we've covered a lot of different techniques, and it's actually much harder than if it was just an impressionist landscape. If it was impressionist, we could have had it done in an hour because we're just blobbing in colours. But even then, although you work quicker, you do have to think more about the colour and make it exact with impressionism. So it does make a difference. And again, if you wanted to get more sunlight on some of the seed heads, you could glaze some yellow. See, my paints are drying. They don't normally dry. You could glaze some yellow as well as white in certain aspects, and that would give it a different glow. But what you want is for the colours to feel opaque. You want the stems to be solid. You do not want them to be transparent, which isn't always easy, but it's not impossible. That's the thing, you know. And because this is acrylics, we can keep adding, we can change, we can move, we can do a whole manner of things that we would be unable to do in watercolours. We could do them in oils, but you'd have to wait a couple of weeks for them to dry. So this is where it works beautifully well. We've gone a little bit over what we normally do on a Thursday, but I think sometimes it's good. So next week, although it's a vase of pastels, I'll be working quicker. Because I just like to give you totally different ways of working, because you know, you might find one that works really well for you, and you know, and you'll work in that way forever and ever and ever afterwards. But until you know, or until you try it, you haven't got a clue. So it's good to see, do you like a more controlled, slower approach with glazes and layers like we're doing today? Or do you prefer just to slap it on and hope for the best? Which is what we do a lot of weeks. Because you've got, you know, you get your fiddlers and you get your detail people. My Thursday afternoon class, I have quite a lot of fiddlers on a Thursday afternoon. They relish it if I give them something with loads and loads of lines and fiddly bits to do. But then equally I have others in the class that love to just slap it on and be loose. So it really does depend on your personality, and it's fine, and that's why I like to give a really wide variety of pictures for you all. So I'm going to I think I've just got a parcel arrived, so I won't say goodbye just yet. I'll wait, because that would be rude just to run away. Yes, there we go. Excellent. So yes, that's it. So I will leave you now. I'll run through the classes this week. So this afternoon is the mossy bridge with the ivy hanging that we did on Monday. Tomorrow afternoon is the still life of pears. Saturday morning is the free demo at 11 o'clock on how to get things looking solid in watercolours. That's on our shop Facebook page, so you just go onto the artery on Facebook and it will be there. Monday morning is a dandelion seed head in gouache. Monday evening is the Kimber Edge rock houses, so they're sandstone houses carved into the rocks. There's nothing on Tuesday afternoon. Tuesday evening is dandelion seed head in pencil. Wednesday's drawing class is a Tudor ruin. Then next Thursday, as I've said, is a vase of flowers in pastel, and then we carry on throughout the week. So thank you very much for your company this morning. It's a small group. I think there's quite a few people catching up later. And we'll have a go at a later date. But thank you so much for joining. It's lovely to have you with us as well, Callie. So thank you for joining us today. Hopefully you've enjoyed it and you've learned a lot. And I will speak to you all in the virtual world in whichever class that you're going to join me on next. So thank you very much. I'll post the photograph of this up underneath the photo reference of the poppies, so you'll be able to see that and utilise that. And if you are feeling brave and you want to share your picture, post it in this group when you get around to finishing it, and I'd love to see it. So thank you so much. Take care, and I will see you all soon. Thank you. I'm looking forward to